I'm Jane Secker, and you're listening to episode 6 of StoryCast 21. In 2017, a chance meeting between Sky News correspondent Ashish Joshi and a 12-year-old girl in one of the world's biggest refugee camps profoundly impacted both their lives. This is War Child.
The exodus began at the end of August, but we're still seeing thousands of Rohingya fleeing across the border from Myanmar into Bangladesh.
My name's Ashish Joshi. I'm a Sky News correspondent, and I was dispatched to Bangladesh in September 2017 to cover the Rohingya crisis.
The Rohingya are a stateless ethnic group who predominantly follow Islam and live in Rakhine State, Myanmar, also known as Burma. It's the biggest country in mainland Southeast Asia, with a population of 54 million.
We're tying a tourniquet on her.
I'd been to cover the initial stages of the Rohingya crisis.
So this happened across in
The exodus, the streaming of thousands of people across the border.
Myanmar is bordered by Bangladesh, India, China, Laos and Thailand, and is one of only 4 countries in the world under military rule. Since it got its independence in 1948, Myanmar has been ravaged by conflict. No ethnic group has suffered more than the Rohingya. Then, in 2017, the military began a campaign of ethnic cleansing against the 1.4 million Rohingya living there, using murder, rape and destruction on a massive scale. This resulted in more than 700,000 Rohingya fleeing to neighbouring Bangladesh. It's hard to grasp the sheer enormity of what happened here and what is happening. So we're going to tell you the huge story of the Rohingya through the eyes of one young girl. A girl I've never forgotten, and who I first met in 2017 in Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh.
My name is Zoora. I'm from Tulatoli and I was born in Burma in 2006.
Rohingya children like Zoora have seen things no child should see. She survived the massacre at Tulatoli, a village where hundreds were slaughtered.
Zoora said she had travelled from a small village called Tulatoli on the border with Bangladesh.
When I was with my parents and siblings before the military came, my life was very good. My home was very beautiful. There were trees surrounding my home, and our village was beautiful too. The houses were separate from each other, and people could go from one home to another home. My father had lots of land and property. We had a banana tree garden, and my father used to sell bananas. My mother was a housewife, and I had a sister who used to cook food for us. I used to graze the cows, and then I used to play with friends and sit with my parents. We were 5 siblings, 2 sisters and 3 brothers.
The conflict between the Myanmar authorities and the Rohingya has been going on for years. The Rohingya identify with their neighbours in Bangladesh. They live within the Rakhine region, which is the borderland area between Myanmar and Bangladesh. And they're not accepted as Bangladeshi, they're not accepted as legitimate Myanmar citizens.
Across the stream from this border guard's gun are thousands of Rohingya refugees willing to risk their lives to get across.
They're not allowed to vote, they have no rights, they are victimized and targeted by the police and by the military.
They're caught between a country that wants them out and one that doesn't want them in.
In August 2017, just before this great exodus, there was a report of an attack on a Myanmar a soldier's outpost, and this resulted in some deaths, and the reciprocation from the Myanmar authorities was brutal.
I remember it was a Wednesday when the military came. They started shooting. The people were taken to the shore and my mother was chopped to death. I was lying nearby the riverside after I saw my mother chopped to death. People started jumping into the river, and I also jumped. I got a bullet injury near my hip in the rear side. I was floating on the water. Then I was found lying down near the riverbank unconscious. I was carried by Waikang people, but I didn't know anything as I was unconscious.
Men were shot, women were raped and then killed afterwards. Bodies were thrown onto fires, pits were dug and filled with mass graves, and the killings that took place there, almost nobody was left alive in Tulatuli.
Zoora, along with her younger brother Kairul, survived this massacre.
After I got the bullet injury, I thought I would die. I could not tolerate the pain and burning in my injured area. Waikang people carried me and gave me food, but I could not eat. I did not know where I was going, or the people carrying me. Only Allah knows what was happening.
My understanding of Zoora's journey is it would have been similar to the one made by thousands of refugees. It would have been up mountains, through jungles, across forests, and wading across a maze, crisscrossing waterways, rivers. We know that the borderland in some places was heavily mined by the Myanmar army.
Near the riverbank at the Bangladesh crossing, people saw me bleeding and said that they should help me to cross the river first.
This is coastal area, so there are large tidal waterways which separates Myanmar from Bangladesh.
There were so many people on the boat, and I did not know about Bangladesh as I never visited this country.
It was a dangerous stretch of water to navigate at the best of times. Almost every day we would hear more stories about boats capsizing, dozens and dozens of people drowning with every crossing.
It took 3 days to reach Bangladesh. I was taken to hospital and treated there. And then I came to Kutupalong camp. When I came to the camp, I saw so many shelters and so many people. I met with my brother in the camp. And I was worried about how to manage our food and worried about my gunshot injuries.
Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh. It's on the border with Myanmar, and it's teeming with up to 1 million people now. Imagine taking 2 small children and having them stand outside Wembley Stadium when there must be 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people there, all pushing and brushing past you. Imagine taking 2 young children, 2 traumatized children, and just putting them down in the middle of that thoroughfare and saying, you're on your own now.
Now orphaned at 12 and left alone to care for her 10-year-old brother, I asked Zoora what she thought would happen to her.
I was feeling better than in hospital now that I was in the camp. I stayed with the people of Waikung who carried me from Myanmar to Bangladesh. They protected me and my brother in the camp. I felt safe in the early weeks because nobody could hit me or kill me here, like Myanmar.
After I spent the morning with Zoora, I asked my fixer to use his contacts. And I said, I understand that traffickers might be targeting the camp. And he looked at me and he said, the traffickers live in the camps. They're Rohingya traffickers. And they target young Rohingya girls and they will kidnap these girls and sell them into the Bangladeshi sex trade.
We're on one of the main roads leading out of the refugee camp, and this is a police checkpoint. They're here to stop the Rohingyas from leaving, but human traffickers are ruthless people.
There is a huge markets in the Middle East, in India, and other countries in the region for young Bangladeshi and Nepali girls.
I heard that children were being kidnapped and I was very worried about how I could escape if anything like that happened in the camp, because I was also sick with my gunshot injuries.
So when he told me that these traffickers actually lived and worked in these refugee camps, he said it would be relatively easy to find one, and that we were to rendezvous in Cox's Bazar, the coastal city, which is a few hours' drive from Kutupalong camp. And he took me to a parked van, slid open the door of the van, and inside was a man who must have been somewhere in his late 20s, early 30s.
Qasim is a human trafficker and belongs to a gang of pimps targeting women and young girls inside Kutupalong.
And I asked him, who are the girls you look for? He said, we look for young girls. Orphans are good because they won't be missed.
There are more and more Rohingya coming to the camps. They've lost everything. They're desperate. So the number of pimps in the refugee camps has grown, and it's big business.
I remember him saying, he said, I've never had it so good. These are easy pickings. This is the easiest we've ever had it.
Now you can even find people sleeping rough on the streets with no shelter, and they have unmarried girls with them, so my business is thriving.
He said there are lines and lines of children without any protection, and we can just literally walk up to these children, pick them up, bundle them into vans, and drive off, and they won't be missed. It was just then, it was in a split second, I thought, oh my God, he's talking about children like Zoora.
Zoora shows me where she was shot in the thigh.
We had to file for that evening's news bulletin.
Now orphaned at 12.
And then it was time to leave. I live quite close to Heathrow Airport. As soon as I land, I become a husband and a father again. And I was looking at my children as they walked through the school gates, and I just started welling up. It was all to do with the fact that I had a daughter and a son who looked like Zoora and her brother Cairo. I had met, hours after meeting her, I'd met a man who'd sat in a van and told me he was ready to smuggle Zoora out of the country and into a brothel, into a red light district. And I thought, I can't let that happen. I've got to do something to help. So I set up a crowdfunding page. I just wanted to know that she could put her head down at night and not have to worry about where she would wake up the next morning. That was it. That's all I wanted. And I think I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and then the first alert went, and the second, and the third. And then I understood what was happening. My phone, the notifications on my phone, it was bing, 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 bing. It just wouldn't stop. And within the space of 24 hours, we'd had £15,000. We had to pay off her outstanding medical bills. And then it was a much longer term approach to enhancing Zoora's life.
Sky News helped me, and Mr. Shafur Rahman also helped me. He gave me a sewing machine and also money for treatment and to provide education.
Zoora and her brother are being schooled in what's now their home in Kutpalong camp. I used a fixer in Bangladesh to help me.
So she has her own sewing machine, she's taking classes, she's learning how to sew, and that makes her self-sufficient. Zoora's only 14 or 15 now, so she's still only a child, but she's thinking and acting like a young woman. She's looking ahead to her life.
I see my future with sewing as I have this skill. I'm a tailor, I can make dresses. I'm also thinking for my brother about how I can improve his life.
Zoora is not only looking after herself, but she's looking after her brother. The rest of her family are all dead. Her guardians now, her new family if you like, are people who have been moved by her story.
One day, actually, and I've thought about this before, one day I would actually like to take my children back to meet Zoora and sit down in a cafe and eat and drink and perhaps even laugh.
We cannot go out of the house in the camp. That is the only thing. But still, better than Myanmar. And I feel safer here in the camp than Myanmar. That's what I think.
But despite the hardship they're about to face, these may be the fortunate ones. Many Rohingya have died trying to make it this far. This body was found washed up on a beach 4 days.
This year, in February 2021, the military seized power in Myanmar. The situation there remains unstable. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees remain displaced. War Child was written and produced by Robert Mulhern, with thanks to Shafur Rahman, who coordinated recordings made in Bangladesh. If you want to learn more about this story, go to skynews.com/StoryCast21. Next time, we're in the UK, where the hopes and dreams of a city fall on the shoulders of a one-time supermarket shelf stacker.
It was ideal, to be honest, to just walk down 5 minutes down to work and then get my shift done, and then all you ever dream about is playing at Wembley.